Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today I'm bringing you a conversation with Mischelle O'Neal. Michelle's an emotional wellness coach with a specialty of helping clients navigate the demands of generational caregiving for children and aging family members. Utilizing her expertise in cognitive behavioral therapy and neuro-linguistic programming, along with real-world experience, Mischelle provides targeted strategies for stress relief, balance, and empowerment. Mischelle, welcome to Message in the Middle.
Oh, it is an honor to be here with you, Marianne. I love that we are able to have this conversation together.
I agree with you. And we were talking, guys, just a few minutes before we hit record, and we were talking about the fact that we can have a conversation so easily. So hopefully we can have a conversation here around some topics that will really resonate. But before we get there, I always think it's nice to ask my guests to sort of give their backstory and tell us how you got into this space, like what connected you with this purpose that you're trying to live now.
I have always been an advocate for women in every aspect, especially going into the military and being part of the military. I was in the military since I was a child, but being in the military myself and coming in at a time where women were the minority, I mean, deep minority. And any job that you were in was usually majority male. And so being an advocate for women then, knowing like I was an electrician and all the guys, there was only 2 women in the whole shop. And one, she trained me, and then it was just me. And it was watching how you had to take on the atmosphere of the men in the shop in order to make it. And so watching that throughout my military career and watching women get upset because men were whistling at them. And I'm not talking about back then, but even as I progressed, through the military, and just how we would never say things, or they wouldn't. Now, this girl, she had something to say, but but to watch women that would actually cower or just not say or take up for themselves. And that got to me. So, I've always been an advocate. And I know a lot of it has to do with our emotional well-being, with putting boundaries in place and taking care of all those things. So that kind of brought me almost to this far.
So I was going to say conform. The word that came to mind is conform. And it's interesting because that military experience made me think of it's sort of just a little microcosm of the real world where we tend to conform to what society thinks we should do. And because you said they kind of read the room and then they have to sort of play into the tone that the men have set. I feel like that's everyday life for a lot of women.
Well, and that when you said that, it made me think about the fact that I remember even as a young child, as a teenager, of learning that you read the room before you interact in that room.
Yeah.
And so that's what we learn as women all through our lives. And so then I started looking at what brought me actually to the generational caregiving is I realized that is an audience that most people don't speak up or they don't even know. They're just kind of hidden heroes. But those are the people that impact those we love the most. And I'm not talking about a professional caregiver, and those are heroes too. But I'm talking about those silent heroes in each of our lives that take care of their mom or their dad, and it's because of expectations. And that's one of my favorite topics with you. It's because those expectations that are just put on us, or how we feel that we need to be the good daughter, the good mom, the good wife.
Yeah. Yes, all of those things.
Yes.
Yeah. And so your job now, your day job now, she's newly retired, guys. So from her previous job. So now your new day job is truly all about focusing on these things with women and helping women to eradicate some of those limiting beliefs and that guilt and learning how to balance and not feel, pressure or guilty about it and helping them with the never ending battle for perfectionism. I mean, that is what you're doing today, correct?
I don't believe in perfectionism. None of us are perfect. We will never be perfect. It is unattainable for any human being on this earth to be perfect.
Yes.
However, there is something that we can strive to be, and that's excellent. I'm talking about being excellent as yourself in whatever you do. It's knowing that you've given your all, that you do your all. And that's not just for others, but that's for taking care of yourself too.
I love that. And I think I told you at the time when we first connected and you used that phrase and I said, I think I'm going to steal that. I have stolen that. I think I gave you credit, but I feel like it's such a great perspective shift for people. So if I always say one of the things is awareness comes first, and then unlearning some of our behaviors can then ensue. And I think once you start recognizing that you're doing some of these things, you can start making those shifts. And I think that trying to reframe the way you think about things and tell yourself a new talk track of, I can't be perfect. I can't strive for perfection, but I can strive for excellence. It just repositions it.
Here's the thing about excellence. You don't be excellence, and you can't be excellent for someone else. When you're thinking excellent, it's about being the best that you can be. It's like, how can I be my best me? How can I know that I've given it my all? At that point, it has nothing to do with anybody else in your life.
Yeah.
It's only that marker that you can strive for. That marker in your life, you're the one that sets that marker, what excellent is for you. You know when you're not excellent. You know when you're not giving your all. And it has nothing to do with that man, that woman, that child.
Yeah.
It has to do with you doing your best thing.
Yeah. And how you feel about it. All valid. How do we get people to kind of connect with that though? That shift, that repositioning, because letting go of perfectionism is a thing, as you very well know. And it's hard for a lot of people. It is a challenging task because, I mean, for many of us, it's kind of ingrained in who we've become.
It's all about finding that inner strength, not by pushing harder. It's not about pushing harder, but about reshaping your approach. How can I look at this different? It's what you talk about being solution oriented. How can I look at this different and make it a win for me and whoever else is involved? That's what excellence is about. It's not about selfishness, and it's not about total selflessness.
Yeah. It's
a healthy balance between the two.
Yeah, agreed. What do you see women struggle with the most when so some of the themes that you have around the space of being caregivers, and I think we've talked about that now, there's a lot of women, middle-aged women, that sort of are caregiving for parents and grandkids in some cases too, kids, grandkids. So they're kind of stuck in that crunch, multi-generational caregiving. And of course, there's more demands on that. So how do you work with folks to sort of help them reframe their thoughts of not being enough, the fear of, am I making the wrong choices, the guilt around giving too much here and taking too much there. But there's a lot in all of that. How do you reframe some of that for people?
So it is about reframing. It's about starting to see things not as a competing element, but as a whole, a holistic whole. And it's about, if you're working, what do you do if you're working? Is start seeing things as trusting, and this is a big word, trusting your team enough to delegate to them. And a lot of times when we don't delegate, it's because we don't trust those that we need to delegate to. And so with the grandkids, how can you involve them in what you're doing? One of the things I love doing is when I get with my grandkids, We do things. I let them help me with stuff. I mean, it's like I'll even call them, hey, I got to do this real. You need to remind me how to do this real, you know? So, but it's also putting them in experience. They're involved with their grandmother. Wait a minute. She's their great grandmother. My mom, she's their great grandmother.
Yeah.
But they're involved with her and they call her and they interact with her as well. So it's not separating those aspects of your life, but it's allowing them to intertwine and using those as teaching moments. It's a teaching moment for your elderly parent or whatever on how to use technology. What better way for them to learn technology and things than with their great grandkids?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to listen to us. But let a great grandkid get with them and make it fun. You'll see them the next thing on TikTok dancing with Gigi Mom.
There's plenty of them out there, that's for sure. Yeah.
So it's allowing those parts of your life to intertwine and harmoniously work together.
I think that's a really great point, is looking for opportunities for integration or synergy across them. The other point that you made, I sort of chuckled internally when you talked about delegation, because when I did my year-end episode, it was a solo episode, and one of the things I talked about is, for me, delegation has often been hard, right? I've been one of those super A personalities, searching for perfectionism, blah, blah, blah. But what I realized is, and I realized this because I fractured my arm and fell and I needed help. But the point was that by delegating, not only will people in your circle step up most of the time, but you give them an opportunity to shine where you normally might not. And so they get a chance to feel proud and feel helpful and show maybe a skill that you haven't seen from them before, where sometimes we sort of rob them of that opportunity because we don't give them that chance.
Exactly. And it's the same thing, even like you said, not only with your coworkers, with your kids too. There's so many kids that aren't learning how to deal with life situations or life because we do everything for them or we provide everything for them. And it's not about us doing it all. You know, I said, there are times I say, everybody wants a piece of me. Well, it's not about doing it all. It's about doing what matters most effectively and compassionately. And if that calls for you to be open and open up about your challenges at work or at home in your family, hun, I'm overwhelmed. I can't do this. I need you to take care of dishes today because work has really got me flustered. Or your coworker, when you say, hey, I have all this. One of the things I used to tell everyone at work when I was at work is when someone tells you to do something, when your boss tells you to do something and they've already laid something on your plate, put it back on them. I would do that every time. You told me you needed this and now you want this. I have no problem doing it. Which one do you want first?
Which one?
That's not my responsibility to make that decision.
Yeah.
Put it back on them. You're willing to do whatever they want, but they have to make a choice.
I think in corporate America, it's not always that straightforward, but I think in spots where you can do that, that is the right thing. I think understanding where those opportunities exist is also something we need to work on, because often we'll try to take it on. We'll try to please everybody. We won't set those boundaries. And while you can't always push back, depending on the scenario, level you are at work, etc., lots of things, there are times that you can. There are definitely times that you can. And I think sometimes, I know I was guilty of this, we'll sort of hide the complexity, or we'll sort of hide how overworked or how much we have on our plate just because we want to be that superhero and get it all done.
The only one you're hurting in that process is you.
100%.
It's you.
100%.
It's your health that's failing.
Yes.
It's your mindset that's failing.
Yes.
It's your emotional well-being that's no longer well.
Yes.
And you're training them to disrespect and disregard who you are.
Yes. 1,000,000,000%. You are training them. And this ties right into one of your most passionate topics,
Yes.
boundaries, I think, right? I
Call me
mean,
the boundaries lady.
why do you feel so passionate about boundaries?
Because I truly believe boundaries is at the core of everything. Every problem we have, it's because some boundary has not been enforced or set.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we set boundaries. How many times have you, as a mother, told your kid, when I'm on the phone, don't talk to me? I will not answer you when you're on the phone. And as soon as you hear, Mom, 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 what do? What? You just broke your boundary.
Yeah, back to your earlier point, you're training them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're the biggest culprit of breaking our boundaries that we set. Why? Because it's so easy to give in
Yeah.
instead
Easier.
of fight. Yes, instead of fight for that boundary. And a lot of times, if we tell them rationally and calmly what that boundary is, the other day I had my grandkids and I love them dearly, but they're twins.
It's a lot.
I actually had 3 twins and an 8-year-old. And after 8 hours with them, I looked at my husband and I said, I need to take a walk. I'll be back in an hour. Boundary.
Yeah.
And he understood because it's a boundary that we've set previously.
Yeah.
He knows that when I've hit my level, that's where my self-care kicks in.
Yeah.
And my self-care is to go take a walk. And you got to find out what your self-care is. And you have to be able to know when you're hitting that mark, not afterwards. You're too far gone by then.
Right.
But it's when you're coming up on it and you're like, I need to do something. And you need to know that point.
That's a really good point, is to learn yourself well enough to know where that point is and then to advocate for yourself.
Yes.
You advocated for yourself.
Because who suffers? Those on the other end.
Yes.
They would have suffered. I'd start yelling at them.
Yes.
I'd be angry. I have no patience. I'd be mad at him because he didn't let me go on, or he said I needed to do
Yeah.
this.
Even though he didn't know because you didn't ask or say anything.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So everybody suffers because you didn't set a boundary that you need, and you're the only one that knows you need that boundary.
Yeah. That's valid. A great case in point. How do people get more clear on setting boundaries?
Listen to yourself.
Mm.
Self-awareness is understanding when I mean, people don't realize it, but there are actual physical changes that happen in your body as the heat is rising. There's a tingling. There could be a slight headache coming on. You're getting snappier. Your patience is wearing. There's all these, but we just push them off as the norm instead of listening. And when you start realizing this and listening to those cues, you're able to read them.
Yeah.
But I have to say this before we go any further. Putting boundaries in place doesn't always work. So we're talking about it working and that us being the culprit, but there are times that people just don't respect our boundaries.
Great scenario, because we all have those people in our lives that maybe for some of them we could sever the ties, but for some of them we probably can't. So what do you do about?
So I'm chipping at the bit. No, so what do? All right. So yes, those that you can let go, let them go. But sometimes there's family members, your mom, your
Yeah.
uncle, whoever.
Yeah.
You can't say, I'm never going to talk to you again. However, you can train them.
Yes. Or limit.
It's simple things like, you know what? This is getting out of hand, or you're not listening to me right now. Put it back on you. I'm not ready to deal with this. We'll talk about this later. And you use that over and over again. That's training. Because this is another saying of mine. We can choose whether we react, but we can always respond. What I did is I responded, but I refused to react to that situation. You can't control my actions, and I'm going to give you the courtesy of a response.
Yeah, and take the emotion out of it, right? A response takes the emotion out of it too. I think that's a really good point to draw the difference between the two of them. I think the other thing that you can do is try to create this sort of bubble around yourself, right? So limit your exposure. So yeah, we
Exactly.
might have a mom or an
Hmm.
uncle or a sister or somebody, and we maybe don't want to write them off for life because maybe it's not that severe, but you can limit your conversations. You can limit your interactions. Maybe you only see them, once a month or at holiday or whatever. And you can keep those interactions to a minimum and step out of them when you need to. But you have to recognize those spots where it's crossing your boundaries.
Right. My mom has what we call a favorite saying of hers, and she'll go, if you hit her button, she goes, function off. I'm done.
She checks out.
She checks out.
Yeah.
And you know what it means, don't even waste your breath.
Yeah.
Function is off. The computer has shut down.
That's funny. Does she tell you? Does she tell you when she reaches that spot, or does she just disengage?
She says function off. She literally says it.
So you had a good teacher.
Yeah, and I know. And for me, my saying is I'm done.
Yeah.
It means I'm done with this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm done with our interaction right now. Don't push it. And as a mom, you don't even have to raise your voice, especially when you just look at them and say, I'm done.
Yes,
They know.
it's those eyes. For anybody listening, you can't see the eyes, but the slight eyebrow and the little, it's telling in the look. The look is telling.
Yes.
All right. So boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. It's all about boundaries. You truly think everything is tied up in the dance between people is best done with clear boundaries.
I do. Every situation someone has thrown at me, there was a boundary that was not put in place or not enforced.
So I'm thinking real time as we go here, a really good exercise for people who maybe think they're struggling with different interactions with people is, I bet a first step would be to just start thinking about when any kind of, I'll say, negative situation percolates, is really just stepping back, even if it's after the fact, and saying, what boundary could I have put in place that would have helped insulate?
Let me put it real simple for them, because you're thinking about it. You're not going to sit there and think about what boundary. See, I had to stand up on this one. What boundary do I need to put in place? It's more like, what am I allowing to happen?
Yes.
What am I allowing to happen that is not making me feel good right now?
Yeah, that's valid. Yes. Good distinction. But what I'm trying to do, it's a great question. It's a better question. What I'm trying to do is reframe it so that people can start really, again, training themselves to think that way, to start questioning it so that they start picking up on the patterns. Because you have actually put it back on ourselves. What have I done? What have I allowed to happen? What can I do about that comes next?
It's because I believe, and this is me, that nobody controls us. We allow people to have that power. One of the greatest lessons I learned, and I'm not going to tell you where or when, it's too personal, but one of the greatest lessons I learned was that someone can have control over my body or anything about me. They can hurt me physically, but they can never control my mind. And that's something, if you talk about Senator McClain, when he talked about his time being a POW, he talked about the fact that the reason he survived is because he had the power of his mind. And that's something that they could never take from him. And if a man like that can tell you something like that and survive the horror and stuff that he dealt with, then we know no one controls our mind unless we allow them to.
Yeah. Yeah. But for a lot of people, it's the waking up to the realization and figuring it out. Where is that happening? I think a lot of that happens unknowingly.
Yeah.
Just based on all of the training we got coming up, right? So
the patterns and the expectations that our mom and our grandparent and good girls, this is one of the first things, good girls don't do that. Good girls.
Yes.
So of course we want to be a good girl.
Yeah.
And so those were the expectations that I put on myself, going into the military, being a wife, a good wife. does this. She cooks, she cleans. Hello, my name isn't Betty Cleaver.
June Cleaver,
June
Betty
Cleaver,
Crocker.
whatever her name was. Betty Crocker, June Cleaver. That's not my name.
Right.
But I'm saying this is what TV.
Yeah.
It teaches us this is what I grew up on. Dick Van Dyke and
Yes.
June Cleaver and
Yeah.
you know, these are how Stafford Wives. We won't talk about that one. Stepford Wives, I think it is. But
Stepford
anyway,
Wives.
those are the things that we grew up on.
Yeah.
We didn't have our idea of strong women were Wonder Woman, Superwoman, Catwoman. They weren't real women. They didn't show them in real life scenarios.
That is true. Now they do. But yes.
And so all of us, or a lot of us, are living in that past that we grew up with.
Well, we were programmed in that era, right? So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Stepford Wives.
Yes. So though, back to thinking, retraining ourselves. So not only are we needing to retrain people, we need to retrain people or train people. Maybe you haven't trained them at all. Train people around us with how they can interact with us, the rules of engagement. But we also need to retrain ourselves to be asking those questions around, what am I allowing? How could I respond to this differently? Some of those questions, I think, start shifting our thinking.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that there aren't horrible situations out there that we're never, let me clarify this, never to blame for someone else's actions.
Yeah.
We can't just like someone can't make us do something. No, the devil didn't make you do it. Just like someone can't make us do something, you can't make someone else do something. So don't think that your actions cause someone else to do something. It was a choice.
Right.
They made that choice and somehow it affected you. But now you have the choice and the ability to say, I refuse, not on my watch.
Or again, change the terms of engagement. This is not how we're going to interact.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not up for this anymore. Yeah. And I think it's worth noting that, like anything else, change doesn't happen overnight. Change doesn't come easy.
Ooh, no.
It's not a straight path. I'm just trying to think of some of the things, right? All of these things apply in this scenario as well.
And it should always be done safely. As I think of situations that we as women are often in, you have to think of your safety above all.
Yeah.
You have to create a safe environment for yourself.
Physically and mentally.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's shift gears from boundaries for a minute. Let's talk about, I know you want to stay there for
No, I'm good.
I want to talk about a little bit about something else that you work with folks on. And quite frankly, I think it's an area that, especially middle-aged women, where I'm going, and I'm trying to come up with the right words, but learning to live a purposeful life, learning to lean into your purpose. I think that many times when we get to this point, we're starting to do some work on ourselves and we're starting to sort of lean into who we really are. I think sometimes we start asking ourselves these big questions and we think of purpose as solving world hunger. That's the one I like to use, but whatever. It's some big ginormous thing, right? And for most of us, our purpose isn't that. It's not some ginormous thing, but finding who the authentic self is and what we really need to be aligned with to truly be authentic and live our best life, I think is a challenge for a lot of us because we've gotten so far from who we were as children and coming back and connecting with that. And I know that you sort of help people determine, what's purposeful for them and how they can move back into a purposeful life. What does that look like?
One of the first questions that I love asking, because I always ask people, what do you love to do? What lights you up? And they're thinking, and I say,
they don't know.
So here it goes. What do you hate? What do you hate? What do you see happening in this world, in your family, in your life that you hate? You hate to see it happen. Do you know why I'm an advocate for women? Because I hated to see them cower.
Yeah.
There was nothing that this light going on. It was, I see the inner strength in these women. We are amazingly strong, resilient women. And so often we don't see it ourselves.
Yeah, we don't.
And so my question is, what do you hate?
Yeah.
Is it kids not having lunch to go to school? Is it your grandkids? Whatever it is, what do you hate seeing happen? And now, how can you change it at home?
That's a great question and
How can you
a
change it at
great
home?
perspective so people can start backing into that thought process. I love that. Yeah. What do you really hate? Or for those that'll say hate's a strong word, what do you really dislike or what really makes you uncomfortable? Put your own word in, but you're doing the opposite, right? It's not what lights you up, what you love, but it's what don't you love? What don't you want to be around? What don't you want to see?
When you ask people things, you can say, what don't you want? It's easier for people to tell you everything they don't want
100%.
than what they do want.
Yes.
You're like, what do you want to eat? I don't
Yes.
know. I don't know what it want. That's me and my husband all the time. He's like, what do you want? And I'm like, I'll eat anything. And he goes, no, you want.
Right.
And then it's like, well, I know I don't want a salad again, and I don't want this. And so it's so much easier for us to say what we don't want.
Yes.
So ask yourself, what don't you want to see happening around you? And then the other thing is, a lot of times we think it's big things. But for me, one of the biggest things, my driving force is how can a person, I want everyone that comes in my environment and around me to leave me, their conversation with me, whatever, better than when they came in. If you're not leaving with some nugget or somehow better than when you started your conversation with me, I failed. I failed in what my purpose was for that day. And so I'm asking, what is it? What is it that just is so important that you impart into the world? And then ask yourself, what are the talents and the gifts that are given to you that just come so naturally to you?
Yeah, that's a good exercise.
How can you use those things in this thing that you want to see differently?
That's a great exercise because I think, again, an exercise we don't often do. And I think we take a lot of things for granted or we downplay some of our talents and our gifts. I think that's a really good exercise for people is just sit down with a piece of paper and think of all the things that come really easy to you that you just do every day without even really thinking about it. And the patterns will start to emerge in those lists.
And the things that other people tell you you're so good at.
Yes.
Sometimes they're not necessarily the things we like, but they're what people keep coming back to us for.
Yes. Yes.
And so, oh, well, I must be good at it.
Yeah.
If everyone keeps coming to ask me about it.
Yeah.
So start putting those things together. And then the other thing I would say is I just did a vision board. I love doodling. And I did a vision board with, I think her name is Diane Beck. I can't remember, but with the Doodle Queen. I call it the Doodle Queen. And she did a vision board. And one of her exercises was your values. And I've done it a million times, but your values and your beliefs. And she talks about picking 5 key values. There are so many and you can pick a lot, but you can start putting them in sections, of this one is pretty much the same as this is this. And you come up with 5 big words. And your values should drive everything you do, every decision you make, and your purpose. When you know your values, when you know your talents, when you know what you don't like, and you put all those together, that's your purpose in life.
Yes.
That's where you uniquely come together. Nobody else has the experiences, the talents, and the gifts that you have. No one else has the likes and dislikes that you have because they're based on everything that you've gone through your life. And nobody has the exact same values that you have and revisit them because they change every year, or every quarter, or whatever.
Yes, 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 yes.
So then you ask, how are you unique? Because there's only one you with that hodgepodge that you got.
Yes. Well, and I think I talk about this often in aligning to your values, such a huge asset in so many things. But one of the areas where people often struggle on I don't have enough time, right? It's a thing we all say, we don't have enough time. We're juggling this, we're juggling that. And I know, right. And I'm laughing, guys, because the eyeballs that I just got. But the thing is, if you have a clear vision of what your values are, it makes it much easier to say, does this thing align? Does my giving this priority make sense? Does it align with the things that I'm saying are my key values? And I think once we get clear, I mean, there's so many ways that they can play into given this time, given this priority, saying yes to this. So many ways that if we have those set of values, we can say, does this line up or does it not line up? And it helps us quickly make those decisions. But I think getting really in tune with our own values is such a good exercise for so many reasons.
That's your foundation. And if you don't have that foundation, someone will blow your house down.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Remember, we talked about boundaries, and I know I'm not supposed to go back to boundaries. However, when you have these laid down, it's a simple thing of if someone at work, if integrity was your value or honesty, and someone asks you, look, the next time so-and-so comes in and look for me, just tell them I'm not here.
Well, no.
What are you going to say? Okay. Or are you going to say, no, I'm not going to lie for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It helps you draw those boundaries. Yes. Based on your values. Agreed.
Exactly.
Agreed. And guys, just for anybody that hasn't really sat down and done that exercise, I think the key is you can go on Google. There's a zillion ways to figure out and map out your values, but it really is just these themes. Like pick a big word that maps to your themes. Maybe it's, family as a priority could be a value that you support. So that means family before everything else, or time with family comes first, whatever, right? Everything going into that bucket. It could be financially fit. So that would mean, I'm not being irresponsible with money, whatever. There's the way you can kind of start looking at things, but it can really be anything. You just have to figure out what those themes are and what are most important for you. But it's definitely an exercise worth doing.
Exactly. Because if finances is important to you and you're outside of your budget,
can't go on 2 cruises in a year.
Looking for a cruise and it's outside of your budget.
Then you guys were laughing because we were joking about this because I was looking at a cruise, but we're going to do a big trip at the end of the year for our 30th wedding anniversary. So I nixed it. I was like, this is not financially responsible to do 2 big trips in the same year. That's just not for us.
And see, finance is one of your
values.
Your values.
Yeah. Being financially fit. Yeah. Being secure.
Exactly. The same thing with weight. If being physically fit is important to you and you decide I'm not going to walk, or you decide I'm going to eat this whole cake, or I'm going to have Cold Stone ice cream every time we drive by it, then you're not upholding that value that you said was important to you. See, you have to look at it and say, okay, so maybe it wasn't really one of my values.
Right. That's the exercise, right? That's the exercise. Is it really?
If I'm not willing to uphold to it,
yeah,
maybe it's not as important as I thought.
Yes. If you're not willing to do the work and uphold to it. Yeah, exactly. Good stuff. Good stuff. What would you say if I asked you what surprises you the most in this space where you're doing the work now? What surprises you the most?
It doesn't surprise me. It saddens me. There is nothing new under the sun. And we all know there is nothing anyone can tell you that someone else hasn't already told you or you've heard somewhere before. I mean, let's get real. I mean, there's nothing me as a coach could tell you that has never been said by a coach anywhere before. But what saddens me is when you give people the answers, or even they come up with the answers themselves and they do nothing with it. No action. And so that's why, and this is what I found out. I have to think as we build our businesses, and I'm sure you understand this too, you have to think, what are people willing to do? And so I realized for my women, there's nothing new I can tell them. But if I could create a membership that helps keep them accountable, that helps give them support, that helps give them advice and solutions when they need them. Because how many times have you had a course or this or that, and it's still sitting there, you only watched the first video or whatever.
Yeah.
Because right then you didn't need it.
Yeah.
So if I was available for my audience, for my people, if I was available for them when they needed me, how much better could I serve them?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what saddens me is the information is there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to shake them and say, don't you get it?
That's valid, but I think everybody's on their own journey. Well, I think we're all the same, and there's tremendous similarity. I think we're, to your point about the hodgepodge of differences, we're all on our own journey. And I think you have to come to it when the time is right. Sometimes we hear the same message 50 times, and it's that 51st time that's like, wait, what was that? Maybe not new. It just landed differently.
But you weren't ready.
Yeah, you weren't ready.
You weren't ready. And that's why I said it's so important for me to have a membership, because I want to be there when you're ready.
Yeah, I get that. And community is a big thing, right? I don't have a membership, but I do have a community. And I think it's important for people to have like-minded individuals that they can share experiences with, bounce ideas off of, get help from time to time. Everybody needs some help from time to time and a hand up. And also the whole premise of my show is there's messages. We've all been through some different things, and we can share that information so that we sort of give a cheat sheet or a fast pass to those around us. We don't all have to learn those same lessons. We can share some of them.
I love that.
Amongst ourselves. This has been so fun.
I love that.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today.
Oh, this is great. We're going to get together on another show.
We will get
I'm putting it out there, y'all.
So we will leak you that information when it's available. And we will, of course, put all of Mischelle's links in the show notes so you guys can check her out and all her work. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.